Thank you everyone for joining us in this poetry gathering called Where Words Defeat Bullets. My name is Mansour Noorbakhsh and I'm hosting this program today.
I'm near the end.
Can you hear me okay? Is it okay right now? Okay. Thank you everyone for joining us in this poetry gathering called Where Words Defeat Bullets. My name is Mansour Noorbakhsh and I'm hosting this program today. Before we start, I would like to share the land acknowledgement. I respectfully and humbly acknowledge that we live and create on the land traditionally inhabited and traversed for centuries by indigenous people, including the Huron-Wendat, Anishinaabe, Mississauga, Haudenosaunee, and Chippewa First Nations, their antecedents and their descendants. We are grateful to the people who first brought language, poetry to this land and engaged to embody their values and sense of oneness with the earth. Also, please be informed that this reading session will be recorded and photographed by Asemana Books. The collection of poems will be published as an anthology by Asemana Books, and the videos and photographs will be published on the Asemana website and other platforms. Where words defeat bullets. We are gathered here to stand for Iranian people and to share our thoughts and words in solidarity with the people of Iran who are suffering the tyranny, injustice, and repression for about 5 decades under the brutal regime of Iran. I would like to express my appreciation and gratitude to the phenomenal poets who have agreed to participate in this poetry program. I would also like to thank all of you, dear friends, who have attended this event. We all are here to listen to the poetry that reminds us of our rights and our responsibilities as free human beings. Many thanks to Asemana Books and Mahdi Ganjavi, without whose efforts this gathering would not happen. And certainly thanks to Canada for supporting the freedom of speech and human rights, a great opportunity to share our thoughts with each other. This event is dedicated to supporting the Iranian movement and honoring those who have suffered under decades of repression in recent days. During January 2026, the Iranian regime has violently suppressed peaceful protests, shut down the internet and communication networks, and killed all arrested countless civilians, many of them young, educated, and deeply committed to their communities. The death of this tragedy The depth of this tragedy could be felt when we remember that repressive forces even entered hospitals or killed the injured protesters with a second shot in the street. And it was not the first time that regime showed its cruelty. They shut down the flight PS-752 and perished all passengers and the crew on this flight. Anytime that Iranian people have raised their voice to demand their rights, like in 2022, the regime has killed the protesters in the street and in the prisons to smother their voice. Writers, poets, filmmakers, environmental advocates, and other cultural voices have long been targeted, silenced, and murdered by this regime, both in prisons and in their own homes. Although Iranian writers and poets have been censored, boycotted, persecuted, tortured, and killed, they have always fought for freedom of speech, and were a strong voice to support human rights. In response to this violence, we gather to affirm the power of words, poetry, and collective memory. Poems might live long, but not poets. Poems live as the long-standing domestic issues which remain as a broken thorn under the skin, and poets die for the needed survival insights. Poetic instinct uncovers infectious laughs and toxic spirits where they have noticed a painful loss or chronic damage that has been ignored or people were forced to ignore it. When the eyes are covered with the dust of lies and oppression, we need to downpour to wash our eyes and to remove the rust of habit from our thoughts. Then rain of words flows, then to enlighten what we need to see now. And now I'm honored to invite our poets to read their poems. And let's begin with a phenomenal poet, scholar, university professor, and the winner of several great awards, Reed Award, Griffin Prize, Governor General Awards for 5 times, and he was Poet Laureate of Toronto too. And his new book, The Wren, is published in 2026. That's the 23rd book of him. Al Moritz.
Thanks, Mansour. Unless it's interrupting recording, I think I'll just try to talk. Now, can you hear me back there? Reading a poem obviously requires some sensitivity to the intonation, but I think I can do okay with both a sufficient volume and sufficient expressiveness. Okay, I want to just make a few remarks. The things that the people from Iran have done in Canada for Iran, but for all of us, is just outstanding. The students I've met at the University of Toronto are just such wonderful people. One of them, as a matter of fact, is a poet in Strom's and Banuzan's Woman, Freedom, Love anthology even. And a beautiful young lady, beautiful poet. So I just wanted to say that I am happy and proud ever to be asked to be associated in any way with the Iranian community here. So that's something I want to say. Another thing I want to say just briefly, if I can, though it's sort of philosophical, is it's seldom touched on the heartbreaking and teeth-breaking depth of this problem. Now, I'm often accused of, but I truly believe the depths of things that must be worked on, that most people think of as mere theology or mere magic somewhere off in the sky, are the most important things, because if they aren't solved, nothing else will change. So we face a tyranny that believes God not only allows it, but tells it to kill and to reward for that, and associates with God every great, good, eternal, infinite thing that we associate with it in the great, Western Hemisphere, Western tradition, Western side of the globe tradition. So this is a terrible thing. You're facing an enemy who, even if you defeat him, wins. So he will continue. We rarely think about this. You get the tyrant who believes this way, you kill him. If you're an atheist contemplating this fact, you say, ha, beat you. You're now nothingness. But no. If indeed that consciousness now is pure nothingness, it died thinking it was going to heaven, and so it has gone to its heaven. That's the depth and relentlessness of the problem we actually face. A tyranny that annihilates even the possibility of what we call conscience. So just to look at the brutality of the reality that is faced. All right? So I want to read my poem. It's in 3 parts. I should mention a few things. It talks about the famous book Haji Baba of Isfahan, a 1840s book about Iran by an Englishman who served a lot of time there, and which is very sarcastic about the corruption of Iranian society, the upper people as he saw it, and had a strange history of about 1900 really being taken up by Iranian reformers as an apt criticism that helped them make their thing. But we would now look back upon it as a sort of a idea of Orientalism. And so that's one thing I should say. I should say that in here there is the fire of sorrow has burnt to my heart's core. That's my translation of a line from the great poem Chuch and Village by Po Chui, or Bai Juyi as it's written today. I mentioned Timur in Isfahan. Timur was Tamerlane, and in the 7th century he created a great holocaust against protesters, right? And I mentioned Peta-Gaye Rezvan Cemetery, which is a big cemetery in Isfahan, or Isfahan as we tend to say today, right? And finally, my last poem, Woman of Persia, is kind of a poem of being in love with Farrukh Farrokhzad. Now, I assimilate her to many young women poets who have been stomped on and smashed and killed. She died in an auto accident back in the 70s. So I glom her together with others and with a frank Orientalism, my childhood lust or excitement at the vision of the naked Eastern beauty. Okay? So the first poem, first part, powerlessness. How many times have I written the following poem? Oh, terrible astonishment. I am here, while the sufferer is there, with me, but over there. How many more times will I write it? 2, evolution. Today in the library I came upon an edition of Haji Baba of Isfahan, the same one I have, sumptuous, like all those I got from a Tony book club through my Aunt Rose. Arthur Waley's poems from the Chinese, slipcased with watercolors, with Po Chui's Chuch En Village, my classic since those days of antique boyhood. Another one that stays, Lawrence's The 7 Pillars of Wisdom. Books of the early clash, kinship and schism of Anglo-genius and Eastern. Orientalism, shock softening to irony, yielding to awe, the rift of doubt and insight, the final straw of certainty, which still has only started its work of admitting every broken-hearted, remorseless assault against greed and tyranny's ranks of spears, mercenaries, machine guns, tanks, beautifully molded bullets or arrowheads in every age where a people starves and bleeds. The fire of sorrow has burnt to my heart's core, thinking how 1,500 skulls or more composed each tower of Timur in Isfahan 7 centuries back, till that revolt was gone. How yesterday, maybe today, trucks carry the body bags to Bagh-e-Rezvan cemetery, while here we are charged with making from our ease some adequate normalcy, some beauty that these who now are dead or dying to be free to live in justice can hear of and seem to see a world kin to their struggles, a good that can be. 3, woman of Persia, beautiful naked poet murdered. Like a bird you flew from the silent prison, and you saw and engrossed all the fields and mountains under you, villages and nuclear facilities. You took in and digested and became, in your waist and your hair, your total country, laughing with happiness and scorn at the roses and nightingales, taking in all the ages, being and laughing at the land of paradise, the garden, the origin and perfection in dream of the idea. Never did you hope to return, and never did you return. You flew. Never did you see again the streets they dragged you from and through. You're flying now, but then they smashed you on the floor. I loved, I was anguished by, I dream of, I stiffened, alert to the world at your soft breasts, your lips that had the outline of a fountain in the woods in a new land just come to, where our maps and all our travels told us before that there was no world. They smashed your mouth. First they cut off your breasts. They threw you out before you stank. Maybe they shoveled lime over you, then dirt, and I never knew. I still don't know who you were, my lust, my love, standing naked with only your jewels on. You have read your Baudelaire, and holding a tablet and a pen, writing me a letter exposed to the evening cool in the open window, you feeling the bare glory of your hips and thighs, absorbed in the longing of your heart for me, who knows you are, not where you are, not what you are, not what you are suffering, how you are dying, my love, obliterated now, and all that I know, that you are, so there is truth, so there is life. Thanks.
A nation is mourning. A nation is traumatized while they are forced to be silent. Silence is the only thing that tyranny wants to hear. Silence is the only thing that tyranny wants to hear. So, can you heal my bleeding heart with your words, please? An award-winning poet has published 2 poetry collections, My Words and Writing for Change, The Writer's Workbook and Fuel Your Creativity Journal. She is an advocate who explores the intersection of creativity, healing, and mental wellness. Susan Ksiezopolski.
Thank you, Mansour. Can everybody hear me?
Yeah.
Okay. I'm going to have to use this because my voice is very, very low. It's an honor to be here in support of Iran. My dear friends that are Iranian that are here, and my family that also is Iranian through marriage. And we are standing in solidarity for peace always. This poem is called Under God's Sun. Under God's sun, we are all one. Our elusive unity strengthens our resolve, stitches us into the cause, to overcome immoral forces, to secure justice for all, unburdened by inequalities, to lead the way out of oppressed mourning. We must graciously carry shadowy struggles to meet this mountainous moment, standing ready to challenge the rustling rage. Let us heed the emancipation of refreshing hope as it rises to extinguish the fire sparked by rancid words, fueling hate, endured for far too long. Even the trickle of time cannot silence its roaring cry for freedom. May we join in song to defend the restoration, repair all shattered nations, guided by unseen forces no longer blinded, now redeemed by the forgiveness of past transgressions, as we seek allies of reconciliations. Even in the blotched benediction of choices, the veil of indifference lifts. We feel the energy shift and awaken as sun-kissed morning glory. Thank you. Thank you.
No, it's not feedback. It's popping because of
I try to just speak without microphone because it's a little noisy. If you can hear me without this microphone, that's okay. We can continue without microphone.
Everyone is okay?
If you speak up, it's fine.
Good.
Sorry about that, that's all I have for now, but hopefully we can improve it for future. I need a strong voice that comes through a real pain with experimental literature, with experimental wording and poetry. The author of 2 collections of poetry, I Send Letters, published in 2004, and Alchemy, published in 2025. Brett's poems have appeared in many different literary journals and anthologies. Brett Campbell.
I don't think I've been alive for one day when there hasn't been a war going on. And my whole life I've read about Iran and the oppression of women there. It is just unbelievable for me. And then I read the Nobel laureate is jailed in Iran. Normally you would be praised by your country. And what's going on there? Your own government killing the same citizens is, I'm very upset. Anyway, I have a few poems here. War is something that doesn't just end when the war ends for people. It goes on and affects them for their whole life. This first poem, I have 2 very short poems. This first poem is Trial by Fire, inspired by a news article. The victim accused displays scars, plastic surgery, cannot hide. Her testimony recorded the dent she made with a hammer trespassing on plant property. The lawyer is the best the military can buy. She listens and begins to believe Nagasaki 1945 was a crime and she is guilty. A judge decides in favor of General Electric, the people who make all terrible weapons. Okay, so I just want to say something personal here. My grandfather was an ally in Europe in the First World War, came to Canada and tried to forget about the war and raised his family here. And then my uncle, Roy, went to fight for Canada in the Korean War, and he came back very changed, and he never married. They didn't know about post-traumatic stress syndrome or anything. He was an alcoholic. His life was shorter than it could have been. The war ends. Second World War ends. This woman I just talked about, it didn't end for her. And he came home after 3 or 4 years. It didn't end. It never ends. Anyway, this one, Army veteran. From his windowsill, he rolls another cigarette, bars on the window and in his bloodshot eyes, in this working class slum. His pension pays for this room he rents, fully furnished with mice that eat those crumbs he misses from these cat food sandwiches. He wakes up screaming most nights from gunfire, still ringing in his ears and the stench of corpses he shall remember to his dying breath, alone and forgotten on the 11th day of November. Thank you for listening.
Thank you, Brad. Can you draft something? Can you scratch some again, I have to back to, probably my voice is weaker than the others, but
I want
okay.
to get a bit further away from the mouth.
Yeah, keep it away from.
Yeah, is it okay?
Further,
That's better, that's
a bit
that's
further.
further away from your
Because
mouth.
there's no foam on it to,
Yeah,
it's
yeah.
getting the, so if you hold it, maybe.
Okay, so
a foot-
now,
a foot
now,
six-
now can you hear me?
6 inches. Do
It's like
6
a lot
inches.
better.
Yeah.
I don't think so that, I can,
That's
I said,
good. Yeah.
Can you sketch something to show how my blood just splashed on the stones on the street, and my body smashed on the street? A Zimbabwe-born Canadian multimedia poet, painter, video poet, photographer. She has published books include Tidal Fury and a prose poetry novella, Fuge in Green. Her artwork has appeared on journals' covers as well. Brenda, Clews.
I'll try without it. Thank you, Mansour.
Thank you.
This is just an incredible gathering, and so much power can come from poets. Yeah. Mansour did ask me to just say a few words because my poem, anyway, we just say 350,000 people marched yesterday in Toronto. Woo! And people came from all over North America to march in this rally. And there's worldwide support to oust the dictator, Ali Keeney, and perhaps install the king. Now, I hope the king would be transitioned to democracy. Let's, yeah. So I do want to say what began as peaceful protests at the end of last year over food prices and the economy became the largest mass killing in contemporary Iranian history and perhaps in the world. Young people were wiped out, like almost a whole generation of young, educated, caring, beautiful people. And the Islamic Revolutionary Guard mowed them down with machine guns, sniper rifles, Kalashnikov assault rifles, shotguns, handguns, pellet firing paintball guns, tear gas, machetes, knives, batons, large wooden clubs, green laser lights and pointers for blinding and targeting. They mowed down beautiful Iranians who only want peace, freedom, and democracy from car and truck and tank tops, from rooftops, randomly killing whoever the showers of bullets hit. Who could do this to their own people? What kind of monstrosity leads and poisons the Guard into becoming such mass killers for the state? I don't have a poem actually on Iran because there are so many incredibly brilliant Iranian poets in our community and who come from this very rich literary Persian tradition. And I don't feel my voice can really add to what's there. But I do have a poem about art, which is about the power of poetry. And it's for Biskinski, 1929 to 2005. And he was the artist that did a lot of bones and skulls, and he came out of the Second World War. And I quote him, he said, "I consist of doubts," and he said, "The only thing wisdom I could pass on is doubt." So in the orange sun trove, I found femurs, tib, ia, broken, ilia, iliums, spines like ishfish, bibs, ribs, carcass, humeruses, skulls, heap, piles. A disintegrating burlap mash, splintered bones hail down ossified cells, osteographies decay. Like Biskinski, bone writing his canvases, ravage of knuckle metacarpals, innocent burnt carnelian that, ground rock, carmine cochineal, insects, dye, blood paint, fossil ting tunnels of human existence, crematoria, charnels, mass graves, anonymity, anonymity. Smell the dust of despair falling from paintbrushes or poems. His canvases stretch like a shroud, our brutal civilization. Bright day, sun rising, wave fields. Thank you.
Thank you, Brenda. Thousands of people, a shocking number of innocent human beings, citizens, were killed in 9th and 10th of January in Iran. Most of them were students. That means they have not been reached the legal age. They were not even 18 years old. And there are many children among those who are arrested, and we don't know anything about their situation in the prisons. The manager for the Toronto chapter of 100,000 Poets for Change published 2 collections of poems, The Outer Life and The Long Defeat, and his poetry has appeared in many journals and anthologies. Patrick Connors.
Thank you, Mansour. I've never needed a microphone in my life. I'm not going to use one now. I thank you for letting me be a part of this very special event. These are challenging times that we live in, and it has become imperative to be on the right side of history. Over 300,000 people were at the rally here on Yonge Street, out in front of the library yesterday. I walk with a cane, and I don't go to rallies these days. However, I unequivocally stand in solidarity with the people of Iran. While it will likely take a focused effort from an international coalition to defeat the regime, the beautiful people of Iran must be the ones to decide what happens afterwards. For too long, outside interests have compromised the safety and security of Iran's people and their ability to live and grow. Globalist agendas must fade into the background while the people of Iran become the authors of their own future. Mansour has given me permission to read this poem, which Mahdi honored me by putting on Asemana Substack last week. Very, very grateful and honored for that. It is not topical. I am a loyal and patriotic Canadian, but I am appalled at the difficulties our First Nations still have in being part of a country which is rightfully theirs. Inuit people were blocked from voting in last year's federal election. Inuit man trying to vote. Tivi Tulaugak, a high school student from Ivijavik, Nunavik, wanted to vote in Canada's federal election for the first time. He went to the local polling station to cast his ballot, but after waiting several hours, Tivi was told the polls would not be opening. In Saint-Louis, Quebec, about 74 miles from Ivijavik, also with a largely Inuit population, The polls closed after only a couple of hours. How can it be in 2025 that eligible voters in 7 Inuit communities either had difficulties voting or were unable to vote at all? Tivi Tulagak is a citizen of the nation of Canada. He is a partner in our shared destiny and has a legal right to have his voice heard. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you, Patrick. Injustice anywhere is a problem for everywhere for justice. So it doesn't matter who is infected or affected by injustice, we should stand for. And thanks, Patrick, for your beautiful poem. Poetry is blood and against forgetting. These are the names of 2 books. Actually, the poet has 12 books, and he is here to share his poetry with us. King Garebian.
Oh, I shared well with. Like you.
Thank you. Just out of etiquette, of course, thank you so much, Mansour and Mahdi, for inviting me. And it's an honor to be included in such distinguished company. I won't say too much about the poem I'm going to read because I think it's self-explanatory. But I will say that much of what Al said earlier and what Mansour said earlier would be reflected in my poem. I also want to draw attention to the fact that I have read a lot of Middle Eastern poetry in English, of course. And I've taken some of the images from a variety of poems, but particularly Mahmoud Darwish, who of course is Palestinian. And I think those of you who are familiar with his poems might recognize the image. Anyway, my poem is called Music for Rough Tongues. It was thought the heart of the land would not be afflicted from within. The sacred book decreeing you live to dream the past. Nothing to ravage it. The present with songbirds. Women as real as imagination wants. The future, a magical place. But now is a nightmare. Your map scorching young and old, with tyrants' biases for false angel with wings to raise up orthodox obsessions to a great mosque glittering minaret, while white wolves of the west howl at the guarded wall. Leaders at the back salivate greedy graft. It is not the night or moon that slays you, nor the desert, the sea, or the sun. It is priests shrieking sermons, guards and rulers with treacherous weapons, killers of enlightened dreams. You were born with wounds. Your hands feel stone, salt-burning lips, hearts stung with sharp grief. Your earth not an anthem, not wine or rainbows, nor all light on jasmine or swaying palm. You, the ones who see dark holes in the heart of your land, throw dice to risk massacre by ruffians, recite poems of freedom, your voices falling like feathers on burning sand, while killers abduct mirrors, obstinate songs, desolate tunes, living diaries, desires, stifling what they fear. The history of earthquakes, lightning, voices with secrets deep in grains of your skin, bone marrow. You are the true lovers of homeland, guardians of hopeful days, voices stigmatic, martyrs of passion, moons looking down at wreckage, life shrinking as tyranny and death force the moment. But you know the wilderness of youth bears gifts, music for rough tongues, hearts and adamant chains, as you sing above nightingales, ambergris breeze, flood tides of blood. Your linked hands, embraces, as real as dying, as real as the storyteller's tales, the avant-garde light burning on water near the city's walls, shadowed by human shards. Many masses dying free of fear, raising ruined faces. Praise be to your arms outstretched to the sun, your unmemorized names creating an unexpunged anthem, a chorale with a single rising finale. Every death is the first death, where biers of the dead make beds for the newborn.
Thank you, Chief. Repression and censorship are what the Iranian regime does to suppress the truth, because tyrants can never stand the truth. Tyrants can never stand the truth. The author of award-winning, best-selling novel In the Bear's House, his 12th book, his novel, and his poetry are published in Italy as well. Bruce's poetry, fiction, reviews, interviews, and creative notification have appeared in over 100 blogs, journals, and anthologies internationally. Bruce Hunter.
I'm gonna try to go without a mic, if that's okay?
Yes.
Okay, that's all I got. First of all, I'm honored to be here today and very thankful to Mansour for inviting me. And there's such a distinguished crowd of poets. Many of you I know in person, and the others I know through your poetry. I'm going to read a little bit of a longer poem, but in short excerpts. I taught for 30 years, 25 of those years at Seneca College at our campus on the border of Scarborough, which is one of the destinations for immigrants in Canada. In fact, it's one of the favorite destinations. That experience changed me greatly. I moved from Calgary in 1980, and Calgary in the days I grew up there was a pretty homogeneous town. It is not now, despite what you hear in the news. And certainly the experiences I had at Seneca that were transformative. And a lot of the students I taught, and there's no such thing as a typical college student, by the way. Many of my students had post-doc, master's level education, but they were studying computers so that they could go on and make a good living in Canadian society. I did a very simple exercise with almost all of my classes. I wanted to find out if they could tell a story, whatever language, whatever culture they're from. And in many cultures, including indigenous cultures in Canada, sharing your stories is a way of bonding. And so it was a wonderful opportunity for my students to tell their stories, however difficult, and also for the Canadian student to hear and learn about the world. And in the process, I learned about the world, and it changed me. I'm going to read from different groups. A little bit of a trigger warning. Some of these maybe a little bit graphic, but only mildly compared to the real situation. Several of them are Iranian. I'm very fortunate to live in Thorn Hill, which has a huge Iranian population. Many of the people I work with, both at Seneca and now, are Iranian, and I'm very familiar with the developments over the last 30, 40 or more years. One of my students was an absolutely stunning young woman from Shiraz, and she was the daughter of the Shah's commander of palace. So we're talking about very high up in society. I learned a lot from all of these experiences. Federico tells me, like, it's too cold here, but some choice. You go out one morning and the car hoods open a little. 3 sticks of dynamite, and this is the 3rd time. In El Salvador, you take the hint, you leave. Jenny Fung writes of the love of her and her husband. The first English she learned were curses, those faces she could read in any language. Cyrus, on the most profound moment of his life, writes a vague tribute to world harmony and brotherhood. When I question it, he says, I'm a Baha'i from Iran. This is for my friends, not wanting me to seem foolish. I nod dumbly as he explains he was made to watch as the blades fell and their heads dropped in the street. Liang Wei now signs her name Lisa, has not seen her brother since the night the pirate boarded in the China Sea. But she likes the winter here because when she wakes in the morning, all the white stars are lying on the ground. Shada tells the class, I was visiting my mother after work, babysitting my sister's children. When the sirens went, we hid under the table, covering my nieces with our bodies as the bombs fell. The teapot shattered, everything crashing. It seemed forever. You were watching, she said to the class that night, on your television, Desert Storm. Dan says it began in April. 2 million of us, sir, in Tiananmen Square. I was so proud to be Chinese. I was a reporter when the official came into the office and said, no more stories. I was so angry, I quit and joined the students in the street. And when the tank came in June, we ran, hearing the screams. I turned to look back, and I no longer write. I study computers. Fardad speaks of a trip to the front with his friend, who asked to drive the general's jeep. We stopped for water. I was gone 1 minute. When I came out, a missile. There was nothing left. At the court-martial, his mother screamed at me. I should have been in his place. And me? What do I know? I'm a man on the beach where the boats come in. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Bruce. I've always been interested to hear from a poet who has some experience living in Iran, especially in these years, and expresses his or her understanding in a piece of poem or prose. And fortunately, we have one today. Patricia Keeney. Patricia Keeney is an award-winning author of over 1,000 volumes of published poems, novels and criticism. A long-time professor of English, creative writing, and humanities at Toronto's York University. She has taught and given readings across Canada, the US, Europe, Asia, and Africa. Her work has been translated into several languages. Patricia Keeney.
Can everybody hear me? Is my voice carrying? All right, thank you. Thank you, Mansour, and thank you to everybody involved. Some years ago, I was invited to the Fajr Theater Festival in Iran during another time of trouble. The prose poem that resulted deals with many impressions, but it begins with my inability to keep a hijab on this hair. The poem is a little bit long, so I will excerpt, but the full piece will be in the anthology. Out of Iran, suddenly Tehran, gripping the neck, flattening hair, strangling, pulling, tugging, fidgeting, a bounding woman bound. I am so wrong here. Who is wrong? What is right here? At the bazaar with Mirza, snaky halls and scented stalls, robes and hands, long gauzy scarf, old Persia woven in, a tempting fashion collapsing like a tent in hot wind. Silky black square slips slides off the curling novice nun I never was. Gentle scarf seller smiles indulgently. I can't keep it on. Takes time. Shamed by black-eyed, lush-lipped beauties, cloth coyly draped to hide shape because God is a man. Standing in the hotel lobby trying to neutralize color, cover flesh, annihilate flair. Aware it is not the men who look, it is the women whose disguise I compromise, who get arrested for high-stepping leather boots. Hair clips amuse them, tracking wayward waves, but Mirza lends soft-hued pashimas to settle me. No, you don't need the hijab, that's professional. The professional women of Iran. 600 years ago, a woman played dulcimer. Rich brown curls tumbling down, resplendent in velvet rose and stitched pearl, she makes a music I can't hear. Mirza drives below mountains of snow between creamy concrete boxes in rows. Sun-sparkled, quiet and close, her own snug plot rises on narrow stairs, windowed all the way up. Small, her place creates space, opening unexpectedly. A bed in the wall, couch and desk and suites with lime. Wedding photos, satin and lace. Another self mincing in strappy sandals, hair swept up, diaphanous sundress, clinging. From past to present, clinging. Jars and cups and painted vessels full of wine, none now, nor closeness of the face, nor languid touch where blossoms blow, and latticed window through fluted terrace goes, nor pointing painted toes, nor feeling all the fabrics of design against soft skin, nature's every outline colored in. Paradise then, Persian garden of delights. Yesterday was hers, Today is what she has. The Shah's Parisian glitz turned shabby Soviet, concrete bunkers for hotels. I remember it elegant, shyly she confides, when I was a schoolgirl. It is dangerous to remember and necessary. Shining domes circle, their tendrils and stars glow lemon and lime, dangerous to look. Dangerous to look. When trouble breaks, she keeps saying revolution instead of demonstration. A Freudian slip? Definitely. I'm here at the Fadr Festival to see drama, but it's all in the streets where cell phones go dead, and we're hurried from crowds, where our translator's friend is gunned down because, runs the story, he looked like police and was mobbed. Iranian drama, intimate, writhing, twisted to song, a sobbing, a wailing, a soaring, the grand ancient legend shrunk to a puppet, white wisdom of Rumi, head tilted and happy, whirling to heaven, expecting all ecstasy, dancing doll on invisible strings. The traffic will kill you, Mirza warns, sprinting ahead of us, hospitably dodging deadly wheels. Watch out for scooters, probably police in plain clothes. Put away your cameras. What are we doing wrong? One of us doesn't. Grips a railing, is told to move, doesn't. South American, he knows the drill. Our passports condemn us. British or American, and they think we're all spies. We enter a blue world, tiled, painted, petaled, arched, dark wood tables under stewing lamb, pestled into a paste of peas, parsley, lime, tawny tea, and vibrant rosewater pastries. It looks like my grandmother's house, says Mirza, worried I won't like this tradition. Things have improved because now a woman can divorce her husband if he has not paid her the housekeeping fee. That's enlightened, I say. But if he has beaten her for neglecting her job, she cannot divorce him. Enthusiastically, she goes on. I had to get permission from my husband for a passport with unlimited travel. Her fine young man beams intelligently at me. Did you give it? With my blessing. Pale walls and gleaming wood, carpet curtains, wrought iron windows, railings draped around eating. It is all they allow us to do. So we eat and we eat joyfully. Try this and this and this. With salty watered yogurt, whitening our nights, our every meal and conversation, converting us to calm acceptance, insisting we have health. Ingesting God. In the hotel, hotly packing to leave, wanting to stay. If you have no unnecessary travel, warns the embassy. Necessary? For whom? Whose need to be here? Who needs to be here? Lured down to the lobby for goodbyes, last conversations. How can we build a national theater like you have in Canada? First comes the freedom to fail. Such a pleasure to meet you. Poetry is my passion too. Don't be upset for me. I am used to this prison. I grew up with the bombs. I have lived all my life in dark colors, not dancing, covering my hair. Thank you.
Thank you, Patricia. Very insightful. Thank you for this pose. And also, it's always good if we learn from someone who has the similar experience, but in another situation, in another country, in another part of the world. But there are very many similarities between what we are experiencing in Iran right now and what the poet has experienced. Writer, translator, and scholar Diana Manole was born in Bucharest, Romania, and in 2000 immigrated to Canada. English-Romanian dual language, praying to a landed immigrant God, is her seventh collection of poems. Her poetry was featured in English and or in translation in literary magazines in 15 countries. Diana Manole.
Hello everybody. I am honored to be here and I thank Mansour and Mahdi for inviting me. I also want to thank all the poets who have shared their work so far and who will share their work. My heart bleeds for Iran and for all the people around the world who are killed just because they want freedom. Yesterday on the CBC News, they said that 7,000 people have been killed since the current uprising has started. I believe that there are likely many more. My heart grieves for the victims of the Islamic regime now and since it had took power, but also for those who enable it. People kill people, not guns. People torture people, not the dictators themselves. People vote for questionable leaders. The current events in Iran and in other parts of the world have made me reflect on mass brainwashing. I recognized it because I grew up in a communist dictatorship and experienced it. My poem is against mass brainwashing based on my personal experience during my childhood in Romania. Just one note, just in case you don't know, Ceausescu was our final dictator, and we managed to kill him on Christmas Day, which I think was not a good idea, because Romania is not doing very well now. And Pionierii României, Pioneers of Romania, was a communist organization which included all children between 7 and 15 years old to ensure that they knew the communist ideology and were active members of society to implement it. We had uniforms, and it was echoing an army, a military organization. So this is both my confession and my reflection. As a child, I loved the dictator. In grade 2, I proudly donned my military-like uniform swearing, hand on the red flag, voi fi credincios poporului și Partidului Comunist Român. I will be faithful to the people and the Romanian Communist Party. O pionieră with a red handkerchief tied around her neck, like the collar of a puppy, starting the obedience training, glowing in my watch shirt, swaying my pleated skirt in front of the mirror. That night I went to bed, fully dressed, dreaming I'd be the pioneer chosen to give tovarășului flowers on his birthday live on national TV. In grade 4 music, I howled hymns, a tone-deaf but ecstatic member of the nationwide choir. Partidul Ceaușescu, România. The party Ceaușescu, Romania. Each classroom, a secular church with his framed photo as the only icon. Tribute songs and poems replacing prayers and lullabies. When I failed the tuning fork test and was kicked out of the choir, I declared myself a traitor and asked the school's nurse to cut out my tongue. In grade 8 Russian, the teacher taught us action and stative verbs with politically enlightening examples. Товарищ президент стоит на балконе Дворца народов. The comrade president stands on the balcony of the palace of the people. I plan to run away from home and run to the palace to meet tovarășul, the prince with gold-crusted work boots and diamond hammer and sickle, to slice the nation's Promethean liver, keeping the communist flag forever drenched and in red. The most handsome comrade ever, eyes like hot charcoal, lips like raspberries, voice more soothing than dad's. When I turned 16, my gift was the Radio Free Europe family secret. Dad, Mom, and I, hiding in the windowless cellar, crouched on burlap bags full of onions and potatoes. Nu spune la nimeni că ne bagă la închisoare, they warned me. Don't tell anyone, or they'll stick us in jail. News sneaking across the Iron Curtain over short waves, a rusty wire snaking from our little transistor all the way to the cast radiator in the bedroom, turning it into an antenna, catching glimpses of elusive truths like a butterfly net. Truth as critically endangered as trust and empathy. A raw awakening, slowly detoxified, rebaptized in the crowds of the 1989 anti-communist revolution. Now, I watch the news and mourn. Human rights protests drown in blood to feed vampiric governments. Women defaced with acid by vigilantes who are granted forgiveness in advance. Bombs blossoming above kindergartens and hospitals. People legally lashed in the name of God. Dumnezeul cui? Whose God? Tunnel vision, the result of state-run brainwashing. So many executioners eager to please, sleepwalking adults trapped in their leaders' narcissistic dreams, disciples of hate, enablers of injustice, so little room for love. Thank you.
Thank you so much.
The poem was really inspired by Iran, about what's happening in Iran. And the line about the bomb, it was a bomb that fell in Ukraine on a kindergarten. Thank you so much. Thank you.
Yes, it is. It's very easy to get emotional when I think that having the radio was possible to hide it somewhere, and to listen to it, at least at some point. Still it was possible decades ago, but now just I'm insisting on the new generation, those young students which are killed or imprisoned in last few weeks, they had internet in their hand, and government, the regime of Iran, was able to shut it down immediately, in a second, and also shut down the electricity and everything in blackout, and start to shut them in the street. And that's why we still don't know the number of killed and the number of people who are imprisoned. Not very precise number. It said about more than 30,000, or I just heard more than 60,000, which is, I can imagine that because there are many cities around the country, small cities, and all have been with the young people protested there in the streets, and we don't know exactly how many are killed. So with the point of radio hidden in somewhere in the house and internet, I'm thinking of the method of communication. Poetry helps us to explore the human communication. Marx' deep interest in the mystery of human communication was a critical factor in his practice. McAlister. Now he is devoted to creative writing and to organizing and presenting at speaking word events. Mark McAlister.
Thank you, Mansour. Everyone who has spoken today, I don't know how it is for you, but it's like, wow, you could say something or something that resonated, especially for those of us who, grew up in an affluent Canadian situation, and just to have yourself opened on so many different levels. I'll just mention one that happened just recently about the radio in the basement. There's a wonderful book by Carson McCullers called Heart is a Lonely Hunter. And there's this scene where this little girl finds her way into the rich part of town every Saturday, hides under the bushes under the window in a living room, and listens to the broadcast, I think it was the New York Philharmonic. And there she heard the strains, and you can imagine, sort of garbled through the window, of the Eroica Symphony of Beethoven, and it changed her life and sort of gave her what she needed to go forward. So we have to just remember that. Poetry's like that too. You just never know when it's going to actually find its way to the people who need to hear it. And I should also, by the way, I should also just acknowledge Mansour. Alan Briesmaster and I and some others had this sort of fledgling poetry group in Richmond Hill. We've been running a bunch of events last year, more coming this year, trying to sort of get people who come who aren't poets as well as the poets, and it's been working out. I see Peter's here as well, but Mansour really has brought a different element to our group, which I think has been very helpful, and I really appreciate your presence in our work. Bullet, a thing of beauty, sleek, silent, impressive. Barrel with mechanism faultless, finely tuned, a perfect framing. Finger, the final touch, quick, easy, the perfect solution. Word, not much at first, tubby, noisy, just waddling by. Mouth, mixed purpose, meandering, often misunderstood, often mistaken. Ego, a trigger in itself, thoughtless, reactive, a troublemaker. In poems, words are like bullets, beautiful, finely tuned, the perfect touch. Not a solution, but a new beginning.
Very beautiful image, very ironic, very, very nice, Mark. So it's time to think about the violation in the modern societies. It's not limited to this or that society. There are many deep questions, many deep problems, issues, should be investigated, should be experienced, should be discussed. a multi-genre writer of adult short fiction, children's literature, and poetry. She is known for captivating storytelling, vivid characters, and insight into the human experience. Her short story collection, Told Ya, which I recommend everyone reads that, Told Ya explores themes of class differences, adversity, endurance, and resilience. Peta-Gaye, Nash.
Hello, everyone. Do I need the microphone?
No.
Okay. Honored to be here, as everyone else has said, and thank you, Mansour, for inviting me. It is my belief that when one set of people suffer, we all suffer, eventually even. So this is a working title of my poem for the people of Iran. Caution, mention no countries by name. Suhaila sits at her desk in cubicle beside mine, crying, my country, can't get in touch with my brothers. Government shut down the internet. I hold her hand thinking about the internet. Taken for granted, a right existing for us all, like free speech, wearing what I want, posting what I want, mostly anyway. Suhaila sits at her desk in cubicle beside mine, reminiscing. My country used to be a great place with freedom, prosperity, wealth, human rights, until it was destabilized by the West. I hold her hand thinking about the West. How I usually hear one side of the story, one country, the good, the savior, the fair, everywhere else bad, fed to us like frosted flakes, sweet, pretty, poisonous. Suhaila sits at her desk in cubicle beside mine, moaning. Thousands have been murdered. Those who speak out, who protest, are arrested, killed, even doctors who treat protesters. This regime is 21st century Hitler, says Suhaila. I hold her hand thinking of Hitler and how we cast blame, wondering how could they let it happen, until Psych 101 explained it all. People stand by watching, waiting, doing as commanded, fearful, mostly anyway. What can anyone do, says Suhaila. Thank you for listening. Careful what you're writing there, I am cautioned. The propaganda police exists everywhere. I get a hint of why we let it happen, a tiny taste of fear. Some grandchild or great will one day ask, why did everyone allow this massacre? What did you do? I held a hand and listened, I will say, feeling ashamed at the inadequacy. I will say I wrote a poem and feel ashamed at the inadequacy.
Thank you, Peta-Gaye. The suppression of women has always been on the Iranian regime's agenda because The suppressors know that the freedom and democracy can only happen when the women of a society would be able to advocate for their rights. The poet of 6 poetry books, most recently The Universe and All That, a mystery novel and a book about post-secondary teaching, as well as around 500 articles, reviews, blogs, and interviews, and several chapbooks, John Oughton.
Thank you, Mansour. I'm going to try to use my teaching voice rather than the microphone. When I was 11, my father, who is a professor of zoology, was seconded to the World Health Organization to help with a common disease in the Middle East. We were originally supposed to go to a place in Iran called Disful. I'm sure some of you have heard of it. We didn't. We ended up going to Baghdad instead. So I lived there for a year and a half with my parents. And while we were there, they bought a little collection by Hafiz of Shiraz, the great Sufi poet. Excuse me. And I read it and thought this was really good stuff. So when I saw the call for contributions to anthology from Mansour, I thought, well, why don't I write something with Hafiz? So he wrote the first and last stanzas of what I'm going to read. I wrote the middle 3. And the lines are from his poem, Arise, O Cupbearer, translated into English by Gertrude Lothian Bell about 100 years ago. Where shall I rest when the still night through, beyond thy gateway, O heart of my heart, the bells of the camels lament and cry, bind up thy burden again and depart. There is no peace for the exile, the prisoner, protester, outspoken artist, bare-headed girl. All are launched into thrashing seas by the cruel winds of theocracy. Hafiz, his invisible heart welcoming wine and damsels. The prisoner, I screwed that up. Hafiz, his invisible heart welcoming wine and damsels, yet spins his feet beyond the body into the vortex of illumination, nameless heaven, both sensual and transcendent. In a Tehran museum at night, dark and still, a sad melody arises from santur and dub-dub, spirit vibrations that accompany Hafiz's ghostly chant. The waves run high, night is clouded with fears, and eddying whirlpools clash and roar. How shall my drowning voice strike their ears, whose light-freighted vessels have reached the shore? Thank you.
Thank you, John. We need to merge our poetry, our thoughts, from the Persian side, from the Iranian side, from the Iranian point of view, with Canadian literature. And fortunately, we have a poet here, a scholar poet here, deeply knowledgeable in Canadian literature and cultural studies. She is an editor and essayist. Her first poetry collection, Love Songs, Prayers to Gods, Not Men, was published in July of 2025. Olga Stein.
Thank you very much. I'm also going to speak without a mic. I'm very loud, I'm told, in everyday life. So hopefully it'll be coming handy right now. Thank you very much, Mahdi, Mansour. I'm really honored to be here. And The speakers so far, the poets so far have been absolutely phenomenal, and they've also created a context, and I really don't think I need to add to that. But I did want to say two things. So first of all, in Chile, during the first few years following Augusto Pinochet's coup, there was an interrogation center located, ironically enough, on 3037 Iran Street in the Macul district of Santiago. This site was known as the Venda Sexy, or La Discotheque, and I'll explain that in a moment. It was one of the most brutal secret detention and torture centers operated by Chile's secret police, the DINA, during Pinochet's dictatorship. So between the years 74 and 77. So my poem will not mention this particular site, but Chile and what happened there remains a kind of frame of reference. And I just to add to what I said about that particular interrogation center or torture center, Venda Sexy was the name given by the perpetrators. They used this name because detainees were kept blindfolded at all times and subjected to systematic sexual violence. So what Mansour said about women being repressed, I think, you know, it really brings this home. La Discotheque was the name given by inmates because the DINA agents blasted loud music at all hours to drown out the screams of those being tortured. And now just to say about my poem, it's not a shapely poem, and I apologize for this, but it's very difficult right now to make something pretty out of the circumstances that are current. It's titled In Search of Words. You've asked for a poem. I agreed, and now I struggle to find words for things we're witnessing. Nature didn't build us for looking on pure evil, the kind of cruelty that short-circuits thought and paralyzes the imagination. There is wickedness that has neither a beating heart nor other parts we'd recognize as human. If only we could name it. This blackness that swallows light, depravity that muffles screams, even when they come in torrents or sound waves big enough to roll over entire cities. Recall that in Pinochet's Chile, abductees were murdered and made to disappear. Pinochet's henchmen used public spaces, including sports stadiums, places built for mass celebration of the nation's brightest flowers, its most formidable youth. The Estadio Nacional became a site for torture and degradation. How perverse was this assault on the fragility and dignity of human life in places meant to showcase the country's strength, endurance, beauty. It took years to wash the scent of suffering from the walls, but now we know, the world knows. Rest assured, atrocities won't stay hidden despite the blackouts. Time is running out and I still don't have suitable words, ones I'd like to offer like water to ease a dire thirst. It's like cupping water that seeps through my fingers, the same way a dying breath passes unseen from people shot in streets or hospitals. And parents, wives, husbands, and children are left to grieve, clutching with trembling fingers photos, items of clothing, high school or university diplomas, testaments to precious youth. We witnessed their mourning despite the blackouts. I don't have the words needed to eulogize the departed or those souls still slipping through the ever-widening cracks in universal justice. Still, I'd like to honor each one, recite their names every night before sleep. There is such beauty in these names, only I wish I hadn't been called on to say Bahar, Asal, Adam, Akram, Fateme, Leela, Shima, Maryam, Arizu, Elham, Nazanin, Mehran, Nyusha, Yazdan, Parnian, Sefer, Sahand, Omid, Mehdi, Jafar, Shiva, Ali, Yusuf, Setare. I wish to fall asleep, not in the dark, but to the gentle glow of a soft light that promises another day. I hope to wake to a sun shining like a talisman, assuring women and men yearning for freedom the world over that freedom is coming. Thank you very much.
It was very beautiful, and what really impressed me was using the names. Well, those are generic names for many people, but I believe if we look at the list of the murder, we may find many of them with the same name as you mentioned in your poem. It made me emotional, anyway. Dictatorship fears poetry. It fears poets. Dictatorship fears poetry, it fears poet. The dictator censors books and imprisons poets. I'll invite Strom to come and explain about what he is reading and the biography of the poet and the translator. However, Sai is working as an editor together with poet and essayist Banu Zan. He co-edited the international poetry anthology Woman, Life, Freedom. So, Sai Strom.
Thank you, Mansour, and thank you, Mahdi, and the rest of you. So, unlike others at this podium today, I'm not a poet. At least no line of poetry I've written has been attributed to me. I'm an editor. Along, as you heard, with the well-known poet and essayist and activist Banu Zan, I'm co-editor of the international poetry anthology Woman, Life, Freedom, Poems for the Iranian Revolution. Some of the poets whose poems are included in this anthology are here today. Mansour Noorbakhsh and Mahdi Ganjavi are hosts, possibly others that I haven't noticed. The poets included in this anthology live on 4 different continents. 3 brave poets published here live in Iran. They are Ali Asadolahi, Ali Reza Adineh, and Abu Bayat, and they asked to be published under their own names. These writers live openly as free citizens under a violent and murderous dictatorship. I admire them deeply. That's why I requested permission to read their words here, not my own. So, Ali Reza Adineh, a poet, writer, and visual artist, was born in 1974 and is a board member of the Iranian Writers Association, founded in 1968. It's an illegal association, or at least a suppressed group. In about 3 decades, he has published 5 poetry books. Ali Reza Adineh was imprisoned during the Woman Life Freedom protests, and according to reports, he was again taken into custody just last month, January 2026. Ali Asadolahi, a poet, essayist, and translator, is the author of 6 Persian poetry books, and his poems and translations have appeared in many English language journals. I won't list them right now. Ali was imprisoned also during the Woman Life Freedom protests, and again was arrested violently on the night of January 24th, 2026. We've been told that he has not been heard of since. Ali Asadolahi translated Adinaz and Bayat's poems into English for our anthology, and it is Ali Asadolahi whom Banuzan and I have been in contact with. Last summer, he wrote an essay for publication, and he shared a draft with us. The essay has not yet been published. The excerpts that I'm about to read may not yet be in their final form, therefore. First, I will read Ali Asadolahi's own words. I will then read his translation of Alireza Adinez's poem, Our Protest's Reality. Excerpts from the unpublished essay, The Echoes in My Cell, a witness's reading of Woman, Life, Freedom by Ali Asadolahi, written in the summer of 2025. A solitary cell is an education in the architecture of silence. For 30 nights, the Iranian state subjected me to this compulsory learning. In that profound isolation, where the world is reduced to 4 walls and the frantic pulse in your own ears, language becomes a lifeline. Memory rebuilds the vanished streets, and the echoes of chanted slogans become a private liturgy. In that crucible, poetry is not a luxury, it is an act of survival. The editors of the vital new anthology, Woman, Life, Freedom, understand this alchemy perfectly, noting in their introduction that when a struggle is waged, the art remains as witness and testimonial. Their commitment to the power of the work is itself underscored by their editorial process. All submissions were read blind, without knowledge of the author's name, ensuring that the voice, not the reputation, was paramount. This collection is an archive of screams and whispers, a testament I read not as a detached critic, Asadolahi writes, but as a witness who has been unmade and remade by its truths. As translator of this collection, in this collection, this moral imperative to tell the whole complex truth guided my own contribution. I felt it was my duty to present 2 pillars of the revolution's reality, which is why I chose to translate 2 seemingly contradictory poems. The first was Alireza Adinez, Our Protest's Reality. In direct contrast, I chose Dawood Bayat's The Name. This poem, The Name, possesses a sacramental power, exploring how the name of one woman, Jina, that is Masa Amini, can transcend her physical death to become a symbol, a sacred password. If Adinez's poem is the broken body of the revolution, Bayat's is its unconquerable soul. It felt essential to present both truths, to show a world audience that this revolution is not a romanticized epic, but a struggle waged in both blood and spirit, in filth and in faith. Together, these truths, the visceral and the symbolic, the defiant and the grieving, the self-critical and the universally hopeful, form the heart of this essential collection, dedicated simply to the martyrs of freedom. Woman, Life, Freedom is not a memorial to a revolution that was, but a living testament to a revolution that is. It ensures that the names will be said, the ugly realities will be witnessed, and the echoes from our cells will continue to reverberate until they become the anthem of a free Iran. It is a tribute to the enduring spirit of all who have been caught in this struggle, including my sister, Anisha Asadolahi, who is in prison for her fight for freedom and equality, has not had a single day of leave in 2 years, and has spent 110 days in solitary confinement. And Ali concludes, I hope that one day when she is free, she will see this book and these words and know that her fight for her ideals was not in vain. The words of Ali Asadolahi. Now, the poem I'm about to read is a terrible poem. Terrible in an older meaning of this word. It evokes powerful emotions in the listeners. If you know the language of the English version of the Bible, you may know that God is called terrible. Not bad, but powerful, awe-inspiring, frightening. The poet, Alireza Adinez, as you've heard, has been imprisoned before. and also taken into custody last month. Many of the poems in this volume are delicate, lyrical, contemplative, and even picturesque. This poem is not. Here is what Ksiezopolski writes about it, quote, "It is a brutal confrontational piece of anti-poetry, an act of iconoclasm against the cheap grace of martyrdom," unquote. You will not forget its words once you hear them. It is a poem for terrible times. Our Protest's Reality by Alireza Adineh, translated by Ali Asadolahi. Not only blood, shit spreads too after you're shot. It's not always like this, that a bullet pierces the body and blood spatters, or it's a neck and you shout, "Oh look, his neck just bloomed." It's mostly shitty. That's why, out of every 1,000 names, only one is given out. There's got to be a clean carcass on everyone's lips. I've buried sheep's guts myself, I know. Makes you vomit, let alone a man's gut. It turns yellow under the body. From the holes in the intestine, just wind comes out, foul wind. Not that nice smelling wind, you know, no? But the wind blowing from a hole in the gut. Not only blood. I saw someone killed in a protest, and for 2 hours he was farting. People were laughing. This video can't be released. If it's released, it's not just the stench that breaks out, it's the people's laughter. And when there's laughing, you can't fuck the coup d'etat regime in the ass. So it can't be released. That's why they tell the snipers to shoot at the gut. Clean death comes on the air, but there are always more dead, more dirty death, more killed than they announce.
Thank you, Sai. Yes, exactly. The numbers which are on the news are not exact. Much more than what they are announced are killed or are in prison or tortured, and many more lies. That's what we know. Peter Taylor has published 7 books and chapbooks. His poems have appeared in journals and anthologies in Canada and in other countries. His latest book, Cities Within Us, Guernica Editions, was shortlisted for the Welsh Poetry Book Awards and Antietam, winning writers. His experimental verse play on the Civil War was awarded honorable mention in the War Poetry Contest in Northampton, Massachusetts. Peter Taylor.
Thank you, Mansour, for inviting me. I'm delighted to be here. Words matter. History is filled with great moments of courage and sacrifice, such as the political terror happening in Iran today, when a people rise up to take control of their destiny in the face of violence and power. During the Easter Uprising in Ireland in 1916, William Butler Yeats captured the suffering of his own people in a single phrase: "A terrible beauty is born." Walter Bauer captured the repression of poets during the brutal invasion of Czechoslovakia during the Prague Spring in 1968. They will kill him. This, they say, is no place for thrushes. But the thrushes do not die out. We didn't even need words for the courage at Tiananmen Square in 1989. We just needed the picture of a man carrying 2 grocery bags stopping a line of tanks. Seamus Heaney wrote, "History says, don't hope on this side of the grave. But then, once in a lifetime, the longed-for tidal wave of justice can rise up, and hope and history rhyme." The historical moment I chose to write about in Cities Within Us was the beauty and destruction of the Dresden Frauenkirch Cathedral in the 1945 fire raid bombings, and the cathedral's eventual resurrection in 2004. In a twisted irony of fate, the British goldsmith that fashioned the cross and spire for the cathedral was the son of one of the bomber pilots. Cities Within Us. Built for a Baroque emperor in his Florence on the Elbe, the Dresden Frauenkirch stands serenely against a lasting sky in Canaletto's painting. Her graceful dome, the stone bell, hard as Meissen porcelain, deflecting the impotent cannonballs of invading princes, to rise above a busy marketplace, calling her faithful to the catechisms of Luther, an eternal anthem of the Ode to Joy. But when they came for her on Ash Wednesday, unrepentant winged furies, carrying 4,000-pound blockbuster bombs and with incendiaries to create das Höllenfeuer, the hellfire, there was no water for the hoses, or shelters for the people, only flames and whirlwind and terror. The dead not cremated in their own homes were stacked in funeral pyres in the streets and torched with flamethrowers. She alone withstood the bombing and the fire, to become a sacred kiln heated above 1,000 degrees Celsius, annealing her faithful to bone ash and eternity, until dawn's despair awoke her ecstasy and she collapsed onto the altar's final sermon in stone. Her spire cross, twisted into a bomb site, lay hidden beneath the ruins for half a century, until a new cross, forged in steel and burnished with guilt by the son of her enemy, resurrects her random stones to bring hope and reconciliation to a city drowned by fire and risen from the ashes of its mortal clay. How many died? Who knows that answer? A great stone asks in silence. The answer lies within us. The cities lie within us. Thank you.
Thank you, Peter. And now, before I invite Mahdi Ganjavi, we know him, a scholar, a poet, a writer, and the director of Asemana, and a good friend, to read his poem, just as to close our poetry gathering. I guess we all know the history behind this, the photo on this poster. A young man bravely was carrying another young injured protester on his shoulders and was running bravely to rescue him, and they both got shot dead. They both got shot dead. And I wanted to say, you made it. You reached to a point far beyond any bullet's target. You were a lion carrying a son on your shoulders. Thank you for listening, and
Thank you so much, Mansour John, for all the incredible work you did to make this happen. I very much thank all of you who accepted this invitation and joined us. I learned a lot. I was moved very much by various ways that each of the poets related to these events and helped us also as we try to think through it, go through it, understand it. Many people that I have seen are still in a period of shock, that even to go through to understand what has happened, the brutality that they have seen is still, so all this mixed stuff, you need to go through your tear to cry. You need to go through that also. You're so angry, you're so, and there are all these various things that comes to your mind. So I have always in my personal life, and I know many people in Persian diaspora, many times we come back and try to understand and navigate these challenging times through poetry. And I'm very much thankful of all of you for joining us and helping us as we reimagine other ways to connect this to other tragedies in globally, and the various ways that you try to bring it to a poetic form full of wisdom. I very much thank Sai for bringing the poetry of Ali Asadullahi, a good friend of mine and also a contributor to Asemana magazine, who, as Sai mentioned, the only thing we know, he was taken brutally, and now he's in prison. Only once, I think, he had been able to communicate with his wife. And he's not the only writer or poet now in prison, obviously. Oh Iran, to know you, I need you to be free. Knowing the bird in the cage is knowledge of the cage. I have known you all my life, as far as your wings, bent and skirt, have reached the bar. As far as your neck is made to turn down, resulting in your head looking at the ground. Knowing you has been knowing the form of your confinement. Knowing myself in you has been recognition of desire in times of trouble. Iran, I wish to know you, and for that you need to be free. Seeing the steps you take forward before flying, seeing the turning of the rain on your feathers, when your eyes do not hide the restlessness of a longing. O Iran, knowing anyone is knowing them at the moment of their freedom. And if I may, also during this event, I try to imagine freedom as a Persian or Iranian garden. So this poem is kind of a poetic imagination of freedom as an Iranian garden. Freedom is an Iranian garden, not loose, not wild, but made with calculation and patience. A garden designed for walking, with fountains that have seen the world through the eyes of water. Water that did not fall from the sky, but rose from underground, from the qanat, from the soil's collective memory. Freedom is a flow, not a command. It arrives if the path has not been sealed with concrete. The garden gate, the main access, is straight, not for speed, but for visibility, so that the body knows where it stands. In the Charbagh, people have the right to walk straight or to turn. They have the right to change their route in the moment. No camera turns movement into suspicion. The trees are old, older than governments, older than states of emergency. Roots do not appear in reports, yet everything stands on them. Shade is the right to sit, the right to be silent, the right to have privacy. Around the garden, there is a wall, not for confinement, but so that freedom can be recognized from the desert. The wall is the boundary of the garden, not the boundary of the human. The pavilion stands at the center of the garden, not above it. Power, if it exists, is visible, questionable from all sides. The flower beds are not identical. No tree is pruned for being different. Diversity is not a threat, it is design. Freedom is that garden which, if its water is cut off, still the roots know how in the deepest soils of yesterday to build the future. And the third poem is, today I learned that I'm a rioter. Yesterday I was only a protester, but overnight on the 2013 news I was promoted. Today they told me I am infiltrator. Interesting, since I still lose my own housekeeping, so I have no escape from infiltrating poverty. Today, to my list of names, they added Zionist mercenary, even though of geography, all I know is the line for ever more expensive necessities. Today, I became ISIS, a multi-level promotion with these same hands that cannot even lift the clod of earth. Today, the judge said, this individual is corrupt on earth. I looked at the earth and saw no corruption, only my foot tied to a metal chair. Today, at once, I became an enemy of God and irreligious. I have a sword and no faith, remarkable progress in a single day. Today, they called me a separatist, while my only wish is that I myself not be torn apart. Today, I became a seditionist, a regime toppler, a foreign agent, a mercenary with a salary whose deposit receipts are still being prepared. Today, I realized I'm no longer a person. I'm a file with a red cover and many names. Today, my names are more than myself, and tomorrow, surely a new name will be added to me. Tomorrow, if my voice is not heard, do not say I fell silent. Say, the case was closed.
Thank you, everyone.